Failure is often misunderstood. Most people grow up believing that failure is a sign of weakness, a verdict that says you are not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy of success. But in truth, failure is never a punishment, it is a teacher. It carries lessons that success alone could never provide. If success gives us celebration, failure gives us transformation, and it is transformation that truly shapes the future of an individual. Think about this. When you succeed, you rarely ask why. You enjoy the outcome, you celebrate, and you move forward. But when you fail, the mind has no choice but to reflect, to ask questions, to analyze, to search for meaning. In this uncomfortable reflection lies the seed of wisdom. Failure forces you to confront yourself in ways success never will. It strips away your illusions, it challenges your excuses, and it demands that you either evolve or remain stuck. That is why failure should never be feared. It should be respected because it is life's most honest feedback system. Philosophically speaking, failure is not the opposite of success. It is a part of it. The two are not enemies. They are partners in the journey of growth. No one becomes truly great without failing many times. If you study the stories of entrepreneurs, leaders, artists, and thinkers who shaped the world, you will find a common thread. They failed more often than ordinary people, but they also had the courage to learn from those failures rather than hide from them. The difference between the person who quits and the person who succeeds is not the absence of failure. It is the interpretation of failure. One sees it as an ending, the other sees it as the beginning of mastery. On a psychological level, failure humbles the ego. It shows us that we are not invincible, but at the same time it proves that we are capable of standing up again. This paradox is powerful. Humility without helplessness. Strength without arrogance. These qualities cannot be taught in classrooms or found in books. They are earned through the direct experience of falling down and rising again. Failure teaches patience, endurance, and the ability to manage disappointment, qualities that are the foundation of long-term success. When you embrace failure as a teacher, you begin to live fearlessly. Why? Because the fear of failure is what paralyzes most people. They wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect opportunity, and in waiting they waste their lives. But if you understand that every failure is simply a step in the process of growth, then fear loses its grip on you. You realize that failure cannot destroy you. It can only strengthen you if you choose to learn from it. The irony is that those who fear failure the most often fail the hardest, because avoidance itself is a form of failure. Running from challenges is the fastest way to guarantee regret. But those who embrace failure as a teacher, who step into uncertainty with courage, discover that each fall gives them new tools, new insights, and new strength. Over time, failure becomes not something to escape, but something to use. So, the next time you fail, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? What illusion is being removed? What strength is being built? Do not let failure close your eyes. Let it open them wider. Remember this, failure is not life's rejection. It is life's redirection. Those who understand this truth stop running from failure and start running through it, fearless and determined. And once you learn to treat failure as your greatest teacher, you will never fear it again. You will use it as the very foundation of your success. Failure is not your enemy. It is your invitation to evolve. Accept that invitation, and you will never walk in fear again. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind, yet it is also one of the most deceptive. Most of the things we fear never actually happen. We spend sleepless nights imagining worst-case scenarios, but when reality arrives, it is often far less terrifying than our imagination. Fear is not an external enemy. It does not exist in the world around us. It is born inside the mind, and because it lives in the mind, it can be managed, redirected, and even mastered. Think about how fear shapes decisions. Many people never start their dream, not because they lack talent or resources, but because they fear rejection, failure, or embarrassment. They imagine themselves standing on stage and being laughed at, or launching a business and losing everything, or or reaching out to someone and being turned away. But notice carefully, none of these fears are realities. They are projections. The mind creates them before life ever does, and in most cases those fears never come true. Yet they steal energy, time, and potential as if they were real enemies. Fear grows in silence and hesitation. The longer you wait, the bigger it becomes. You tell yourself, "I'll try tomorrow." But tomorrow never comes because fear feeds on delay. It whispers, "What if you fail? What if they mock you? What if you lose everything?" But the truth is, those what-ifs are shadows. They have no real substance until you give them power. And here lies the great secret. The moment you act, the moment you take one bold step, fear begins to collapse. Fear cannot survive momentum. Action is the medicine that cures hesitation. Philosophically, fear is a mirror. It reflects our doubts back to us. If you fear failure, it means you secretly doubt your resilience. If you fear rejection, it means you are still measuring your worth by the approval of others. If you fear risk, it means you haven't yet trusted yourself enough to handle uncertainty. So, fear is not just a feeling. It is feedback. It reveals where your growth must happen. To live fearlessly does not mean to be free of fear. It means to stop letting fear dictate the boundaries of your life. Psychologists often say that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite fear. And that is the difference between ordinary and extraordinary lives. Ordinary people wait for the day when fear disappears. Extraordinary people accept that fear will always exist, but they choose to walk forward anyway. History remembers the fearless not because they never felt afraid, but because they refused to let fear make their decisions for them. Consider this. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every great leap forward in history was born from someone who dared to ignore fear. Flying was once thought impossible, yet the Wright brothers ignored fear and built an airplane. Business empires were once only dreams, but entrepreneurs ignored the fear of failure and tried anyway. Even personal relationships thrive only when people are fearless enough to be vulnerable. Fearless action is the seed of progress in every domain of life. So, the challenge for you is not to kill fear, it is to stop feeding it. Stop giving your imagination to fear and start giving it to vision. If you are going to imagine something, imagine what can go right, not just what can go wrong. If you are going to build scenarios in your head, build scenarios of success, not just disaster. Because just as fear is created in the mind, so is courage. Both are mental stories, but only one moves your life forward. The truth is simple. Fear is nothing more than an illusion dressed as reality. Once you see it for what it is, it loses its grip on you. And when you choose action over hesitation, courage over doubt, you discover that fear was never a wall. It was only a shadow. Fear is imaginary, but courage is real. Act despite fear, and you will realize that the only thing that was ever holding you back was yourself. Greatness is often admired as though it belongs only to a special class of people, geniuses, visionaries, or those born with rare talent. But if you study history carefully, you'll realize greatness has very little to do with natural gifts, and everything to do with the ability to endure failure. Every remarkable leader, every innovator, every creator who changed the world has one thing in common: they failed more than others were willing to fail. Their greatness was not given. It was forged in the fire of falling and rising again. When we talk about failure, most people think of it as an obstacle. But for those who eventually become extraordinary, failure is not an obstacle. It is a qualification. Each failure becomes a stamp on the passport of greatness. It is proof that they dared to attempt what others only dreamed of. The person who fails many times is the person who is testing the limits, exploring new ground, and learning at a depth the cautious will never know. Greatness demands this repeated falling because only through it do we gain the endurance to handle the weight of success. Think of a child learning to walk. The child stumbles, falls, and cries, but still pulls themselves up and tries again. No one looks at the child and says, "Walking is not for you." Instead, we accept falling as a natural part of learning, yet as adults we forget this truth. We fail once and we convince ourselves we're not capable. We fail twice and we decide the dream is too big. But greatness belongs to those who never stop pulling themselves back up, no matter how many times they fall. Philosophically, failure is the sculptor of character. Success may polish the surface, but failure shapes the structure. It teaches humility because it reminds us that we are not infallible. It teaches strength because it forces us to recover when our confidence is shaken. It teaches wisdom because it makes us reflect deeply on our choices. Without these qualities, success becomes fragile, temporary, and often destructive. Failure prepares us to carry greatness with responsibility and maturity. There is also a psychological transformation that comes from repeated failure. At first, every fall feels heavy, humiliating, and discouraging, but with time, the mind becomes stronger. It stops seeing failure as a personal attack and starts seeing it as part of the process. The fear of falling diminishes, and what remains is resilience. This resilience is the invisible backbone of greatness. It allows a person to take bigger risks, to keep going when others quit, and to keep believing when there is no evidence of progress. Look at the entrepreneurs who built companies that changed the world. Before success, most of them were dismissed, rejected, or even ridiculed. Investors turned them away. Their ideas were laughed at. They experienced not just one failure, but dozens. Yet each rejection was not a wall. It was a test of persistence. They didn't stop because the world said no. They kept moving until the world had no choice but to say yes. Greatness was not granted to them. It was earned through the repeated act of rising again. The truth is simple, but often uncomfortable. You cannot skip failure if you want to achieve something extraordinary. The path to greatness is paved with broken attempts, shattered plans, and moments of doubt. But each fall is not wasted. Each fall builds the strength, the vision, and the courage required to stand taller the next time. The ordinary quit after one or two failures. The extraordinary keep going until failure itself gives way to success. So the question is not whether you will fail. You will. The question is how you will respond when you do. Will you see failure as proof you should stop, or will you see it as proof you are on the path of growth? Greatness does not come to those who avoid falling. It comes to those who keep rising again and again until even failure bows before their persistence. Opportunities in life rarely announce themselves with certainty. They don't come with a guarantee, and they don't arrive neatly packaged in comfort. More often, opportunities are hidden inside risk, disguised as uncertainty, or even camouflaged by failure. And this is why only the fearless ever truly discover them. Fearless action has a way of creating opportunities that hesitation will never reveal. The truth is simple. The world doesn't hand over chances to those who sit quietly waiting. It rewards those who dare to move. Think about it. How many people dream of starting a business but never take the first step because they are waiting for the perfect time? How many hide their talents, afraid to put their work into the world in case someone criticizes it? How many stay in unfulfilling jobs or unhealthy environments simply because stepping out feels uncertain? These people don't lack intelligence or ability. What they lack is the courage to act despite fear. And without fearless action, opportunity passes them by, because opportunity is not something we find. It is something we create through movement. Philosophically, this is where fear and opportunity intersect. Fear convinces us to stay safe, to avoid mistakes, to protect ourselves from failure. But by doing so, it also protects us from growth. Opportunity lives outside the comfort zone. Fear lives inside it. To live fearlessly doesn't mean to be reckless. It means to step beyond what feels safe, trusting that even if you fall, the experience itself will build new paths. The fearless know that risk is not something to avoid, but something to manage, and in that management lies discovery. History is filled with examples of people who saw opportunity because they acted boldly where others hesitated. Entrepreneurs who launched businesses in markets no one believed in. Leaders who spoke truths others were too afraid to say. Innovators who dared to explore new ideas knowing that the world might laugh at them. These people were not lucky, they were courageous. They didn't wait for opportunity to knock. They went out and built the door themselves. And once they built it, others saw it too. This is the beauty of fearless action. It not only opens opportunities for you, it inspires opportunities for others. On a psychological level, fearless action trains the mind to embrace uncertainty rather than fear it. Each time you act in the face of fear, you prove to yourself that you are capable of handling risk. That proof builds confidence, and with confidence comes a clearer vision, sharper decisions, and greater momentum. The person who hesitates sees obstacles everywhere. The person who acts sees possibilities. The difference is not in the world around them, but in the courage within them. Even failure itself, when approached fearlessly, turns into opportunity. A failed project teaches you more about the market than endless planning ever could. A rejection builds resilience and clarity. A mistake forces creativity and adaptation. What looks like an ending is often the beginning of a better direction. This is why fearless action is never wasted. It always generates movement, and movement always generates possibility. So the real danger in life is not failing, it is standing still. When you wait too long, opportunities decay. The timing shifts, the world moves on, and your hesitation becomes your biggest loss. But when you act fearlessly, even imperfectly, you place yourself in motion, and in motion, life reveals doors you never saw before. If you want to seize opportunities, you must stop waiting for permission, stop waiting for certainty, and stop waiting for the right moment. The right moment is created, not found. Fearless action is the spark that turns potential into reality. Remember this: opportunities are not discovered by the cautious. They are created by the fearless. If you dare to act, doors will open where walls once stood. Resilience is one of those words that gets used often, but very few truly understand its depth. People think resilience simply means not giving up, but in reality, resilience is much more than stubbornness. It is the ability to transform struggle into strength, to turn pain into wisdom, and to rise from difficulty not just the same, but stronger than before. And resilience is born only in struggle. You cannot read about it in books, you cannot borrow it from someone else, and you cannot fake it. It is earned in the moments when life tests you, when everything seems against you, and yet you choose to keep moving forward. Failure, hardship, rejection. These are not accidents on the road of life. They are part of its design. They are the weight that builds the muscle of resilience. Just as steel is tempered by fire, the human spirit is tempered by struggle. The more pressure it endures, the more unbreakable it becomes. Without struggle, there is no resilience, and without resilience, there can be no greatness. Think for a moment about the difference between those who collapse under difficulty and those who rise. It is not intelligence, it is not talent, it is not even luck. The difference lies in their relationship with struggle. Some people see struggle as a sign they should quit. Others see it as proof that they are being prepared for something greater. The mindset you choose when facing hardship determines whether you will break or whether you will be built. Philosophically, resilience is the bridge between failure and success. It is the invisible force that allows you to cross from despair to hope, from defeat to victory. Every setback whispers, "Stop, this is too much." But resilience answers back, "I will continue." That dialogue within the self is what defines the direction of a person's life. Those who lack resilience surrender at the first strong wind. Those who have resilience weather the storm and eventually walk into calm skies stronger than before. On a psychological level, resilience is also about adaptation. When faced with struggle, most people resist. They fight reality, they deny it, they complain about it. But the resilient mind adapts. It says, "This is the reality. How can I use it? This ability to adapt is why resilient people often discover opportunities where others see only obstacles. They don't waste energy wishing things were easier. They use their energy to become stronger. History is filled with individuals who turned immense struggle into resilience, and resilience into greatness. Leaders who were imprisoned but emerged wiser. Entrepreneurs who lost everything but built again. Thinkers who were ridiculed but kept pursuing their ideas until the world caught up. What made them extraordinary was not a life free from struggle. It was a life filled with it. And yet, they used that struggle as training, as preparation, as the raw material for their eventual success. Resilience is also deeply connected to hope. Without hope, resilience collapses. But with even the smallest seed of hope, resilience grows. This is why it is vital to remind yourself, even in the darkest moments, that struggle is not permanent, but the strength it gives you will be. When you carry that belief, you stop fearing struggle and start embracing it as part of your journey. So when life pushes you down, when things don't go your way, when failure feels heavy, remember this is not the end. This is your training ground. These are the moments that shape you into the kind of person who can carry success without breaking under its weight. Struggle is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Resilience is the lesson. And if you choose to learn it, there will be nothing in life strong enough to stop you. Fear is clever, it does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers, quietly planting doubts, distracting your focus and scattering your energy. You may not even realize it, but fear has a way of turning simple decisions into endless hesitation. And hesitation is costly, because the longer you wait, the weaker your belief becomes. This is why so many people abandon their dreams, not because they lack the ability, but because fear slowly drains their conviction. Yet there is one tool that dismantles fear more effectively than anything else: discipline. Discipline may not sound exciting, but it is the quiet power behind every fearless life. Where fear scatters the mind, discipline gathers it. Where fear creates excuses, discipline creates structure. Fear tells you not today, maybe tomorrow. Discipline replies today no matter what. And over time, discipline wins. The people who appear fearless are not those who never feel doubt. They are those who have trained their minds and habits so well that they move forward regardless of doubt. Philosophically, discipline is freedom. At first, that sounds like a contradiction. How can discipline, rules, routines, commitment, create freedom? But think about it. The person without discipline is controlled by fear, by laziness, by distraction. They live at the mercy of moods and emotions. The disciplined person, on the other hand, is free to pursue what truly matters, because they are not enslaved by fear or impulses. In this way, discipline does not restrict life, it liberates it. Psychologically, discipline is repetition that builds confidence. When you show up every day, even when you don't feel like it, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your excuses. That proof rewires the brain. Slowly, fear loses its grip, because discipline has created evidence that you can endure, persist, and achieve. And the more evidence you create, the more confidence you carry into the next challenge. Confidence is not a gift. It is the result of disciplined action repeated over time. In business, in art, in personal growth, you will always encounter uncertainty. Fear thrives in uncertainty. It wants you to overthink, to analyze endlessly, to wait until conditions feel perfect. But discipline refuses to negotiate with fear. It says, I will do the work. I will keep building. I will keep moving. And in that consistency, you gain clarity. Opportunities reveal themselves, skills compound, and progress accelerates. Discipline is the bridge between intention and achievement, and without it, fear will always win. Think about the people who inspire you: athletes, leaders, innovators. What separates them from the rest is not just talent, it is discipline. When fear said, "You can't," their discipline answered, "Watch me." When fear tempted them to quit, discipline carried them forward, and because they kept showing up, they reached levels others only dream about. This is why discipline is not optional if you want to live fearlessly. It is the foundation of fearlessness itself. Even in failure, discipline matters. Discipline does not prevent failure, but it ensures that failure does not become final. It gives you the strength to analyze what went wrong, to try again, to keep going when motivation disappears. Without discipline, failure feels like the end. With discipline, failure feels like part of the process. And when failure is no longer the enemy, fear loses one of its greatest weapons. So when fear enters your mind, don't argue with it, don't wait for it to disappear. Instead, let discipline do the work. Show up, take the step, do the task. Discipline silences fear not with words, but with action. Fear thrives on hesitation, but discipline destroys hesitation. Build discipline, and you will build a life where fear has no power over you. Fearless people do not simply act differently, they think differently. Their mindset operates on a level that most people never dare to reach, because fear has already set boundaries around their imagination. Fear says, stay safe, don't risk embarrassment, don't step outside the line. But fearless thinkers ask, why not? What if there is a better way? What if the line itself is the illusion? This shift in thought is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. The difference is not just in skill, but in vision. When fear dominates thinking, creativity suffocates. You begin to recycle the same ideas, follow the same patterns, and imitate what others are already doing. Fearful thinking is conservative, always protecting, never creating. But fearless thinking is expansive. It questions assumptions, it challenges limitations, and it gives birth to ideas that others dismiss as impossible. Every major breakthrough in history, from technology to art to social change, was made by someone who dared to think beyond fear, beyond convention, beyond what was considered reasonable. Philosophically, fearless thinking is rooted in freedom. Most people are imprisoned not by physical walls, but by mental ones. They live inside a box built from other people's opinions, from cultural norms, from the fear of rejection. But fearless thinkers break that box. They understand that new realities are created not by following the crowd, but by daring to imagine a world that does not yet exist. In this sense, fearlessness is not just an attitude. It is an act of creation. On a psychological level, fearless thinking allows for exploration. The mind that is not shackled by fear explores possibilities with curiosity instead of judgment. It does not immediately ask, "What if I fail?" but instead asks, "What can I learn if I try?" This curiosity opens doors that fearful minds never even notice. And once you start thinking this way, opportunities multiply. Because the world does not reward those who copy. It rewards those who innovate. Look at the entrepreneurs who shaped industries, the inventors who changed daily life, the leaders who transformed nations. Their paths were never obvious. In fact, many of their ideas were ridiculed in the beginning. But they did not let fear decide what was possible. They thought differently, they dared to imagine boldly, and eventually the world adjusted to their vision. That is the essence of fearless thinking, creating the future while others are still debating the present. Fearless thinking also changes how you view failure. While fearful minds avoid failure, fearless minds embrace it as a stepping stone. They understand that every attempt, successful or not, expands knowledge. Fearless thinkers don't see a failed idea as wasted effort. They see it as raw data, as fuel for the next experiment. This is why they can keep innovating when others stop. They are not paralyzed by the possibility of being wrong, because to them, being wrong is part of being right eventually. And perhaps the greatest power of fearless thinking is its contagious nature. When one person dares to think differently, they inspire others to do the same. A single fearless mind can spark a movement, shift an entire industry, or awaken a generation. This is why cultivating fearless thought is not just a personal advantage. It is a social responsibility, because when you think fearlessly, you give others permission to do the same. So the choice is yours. Will you allow fear to define the limits of your imagination, or will you dare to think beyond it? Because the moment you start thinking fearlessly, your world expands, your creativity flourishes, and your future begins to take shape in ways you never thought possible. Fearless thought is the birthplace of innovation. Dare to think differently, and you will not only change your life, you may change the world. Failure is often misunderstood as the end of the road, a sign that your efforts were wasted and your journey is over. But in truth, failure is rarely a dead end. It is far more often a redirection. Life has a way of guiding us, sometimes gently, sometimes harshly, toward the path that truly belongs to us. What we call failure is often the signal that we were walking in the wrong direction, or perhaps not ready for the challenge we were chasing. If you look closely, you'll see that every failure carries a hidden invitation to adjust, to refine, to grow, and to try again with sharper vision. Many of the most successful people in the world did not reach their destination through a straight path. They zigzagged, they stumbled, they were pushed off course, only to discover a new direction they would never have considered if success had come too easily. Failure redirected them toward greater opportunities. What looked like rejection was, in fact, protection. What seemed like loss was actually preparation. Sometimes the door that closes is the very door that saves you from wasting years of your life. Philosophically, this perspective is powerful. It means that failure is not life punishing you, it is life teaching you. Success may tell you, keep going. Failure tells you, look deeper. And when you look deeper, you often realize that the original plan was too small, too shallow, or simply not aligned with your true potential. The redirection gives you the chance to create something more meaningful. Instead of asking, why did I fail? The better question is, where is this failure leading me? That shift in thinking transforms disappointment into discovery. On a psychological level, failure as redirection builds resilience and adaptability. Most people fear failure because they see it as permanent. They believe that one setback defines their future. But the resilient mind recognizes that failure is temporary. It is feedback. It is saying, this way is blocked, try another. When you embrace failure as redirection, you stop clinging to a single outcome. You start seeing multiple paths, multiple strategies, multiple ways forward. That flexibility is what keeps you moving when others freeze. History gives us countless examples of redirection disguised as failure. Famous inventions were discovered accidentally after failed attempts at creating something else. Businesses that began with one purpose often found their real success in a completely different market. Even in personal lives, people who faced heartbreaks or lost jobs later discovered new careers, relationships, or passions that gave them more fulfillment than their original plan ever could. Without the so-called failure, they would never have arrived where they truly belonged. But here is the challenge. In the moment of failure, redirection is hard to see. All you feel is loss. All you see is the door closing. That is why perspective matters so much. If you train your mind to interpret failure not as defeat but as guidance, you free yourself from despair. Instead of sitting in regret, you begin searching for the hidden door that just opened, and there is always a door. This is why fearlessness is so essential. If you are afraid of failure, you will miss the redirection it offers. You will see only the ending, not the new beginning. But if you embrace failure fearlessly, you will recognize that every fall carries information, every setback carries direction, and every rejection carries possibility. So the next time failure knocks you down, do not waste time asking, why me? Ask instead, where next? Because in that question lies the seed of transformation. Failure is not your final destination, it is your compass. Trust its redirection, and it will guide you to places far greater than the ones you first imagined. When we talk about failure and fearlessness, it's easy to think of them only as personal experiences, moments that shape our own journey. But the truth is, how you handle failure doesn't just affect you, it influences everyone around you. Your family, your colleagues, your community, even people who barely know you are watching how you respond when things don't go your way. And whether you realize it or not, you're sending them a message about resilience, about courage, about the human capacity to rise again. That's why embracing failure fearlessly is not just a personal victory. It's an act of leadership. Leadership is not about a title or position, it is about influence, and influence is created not when you succeed effortlessly, but when you fail visibly and yet keep moving. People rarely draw inspiration from perfection, they draw it from authenticity. When others see you stumble, face rejection, or lose, and yet they also see you stand back up, regroup, and move forward, that is when they feel something shift inside themselves. They start to believe that maybe they can do the same. Your courage gives them permission to find theirs. Philosophically, this is why failure is so profound. Failure strips away the illusion that success is reserved for the flawless. It reminds us of our shared humanity. When you admit, yes, I failed, yes, I was rejected, yes, I lost, but you follow it with, and still, I continue, you embody a truth that people can't ignore. You become living proof that failure is not fatal. And that proof is more powerful than any motivational quote, because it is real. Psychologically, this creates a ripple effect. Resilience is contagious. Just as fear can spread in a group and paralyze everyone, fearlessness can spread and energize them. One person who refuses to quit, who embraces failure as part of growth, can shift the mood of an entire room. Think about a team facing a difficult challenge. If the leader collapses at the first setback, morale dies. But if the leader says, yes, this is hard, but it's not the end, suddenly everyone finds a bit of strength to push forward. This is the multiplier effect of courage. It magnifies far beyond the individual. But here's the key. This influence doesn't require you to be extraordinary. You don't have to be the CEO of a company or the star of a stage. It can happen in your family when your children see you try again after disappointment. It can happen in your circle of friends when they see you refuse to let fear dictate your choices. It can happen quietly in your workplace when colleagues watch you take responsibility for mistakes and still move forward without shame. These moments of visible resilience leave an imprint, shaping how others approach their own failures. Now imagine what kind of society we would create if more people adopted this mindset. A society where failure is not stigmatized but understood as part of progress. A culture where fearlessness is not recklessness, but the willingness to keep learning, adjusting, and trying. That is how innovation thrives, how communities grow stronger, and how individuals break cycles of limitation. Every fearless response to failure plants a seed for someone else, and those seeds can grow into movements. So as we close, let me leave you with this. Your relationship with failure is not just about you. It is about the lives you touch, the people you inspire, and the legacy you leave. Every time you choose to stand up after falling, you are not only building your own story, you are giving someone else the courage to rewrite theirs. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is the fire that forges it. Fearlessness is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward anyway, and together they do more than shape your destiny. They shape the future of everyone who dares to follow your example.